Welcome to another episode of the Antifragility Reframe podcast. I am Dr. Frank L. Douglas, your host, and today we'll be having another alumnus from Lehigh as we look at stories from alumni who are talking about reframe and antifragility during their undergraduate years and how they made them anti-fragile and prepared them for challenges that they have had or might be having in their postgraduate life. My guest today is Mr. Adrian Suarez. He's the class of 22 and also has his master's in business analytics uh, in 23, both from Lehigh. And presently he works at Ernst Young. Adrian, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be part of the program.
Well, I am delighted that you agreed to participate, and thank you for inviting me to the panel, which you
Mhm.
had not so long ago. I thoroughly enjoyed that. So,
Yes, the Financial Services Forum. Yes,
yes,
yes.
yeah. Did Ernst and Young participate in that forum too?
Yeah, I came partially to recruit, but also mainly as an alumni. It was really the working a brain of Ken Hoekster.
Ken Hunt. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah. He's really the man
The brain
behind
behind
the
it.
show.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay, very
Him plus like the rest of the Wall Street Council folks. But yeah, that was thank you for being there. And I know like a lot of the students, especially right, atypical students, right, that like
yes.
go the finance or financial professional services route. I think they really appreciated hearing your perspective.
Well, thank you very much. I enjoyed it and thank you for the invitation. So tell me,
Mhm.
can you think back on uh, a challenging episode during your undergraduate days? An episode that you found very
Mhm.
challenging. Could you share that with us?
Yeah, definitely. I brought a prop with me
That's
as
okay.
a I brought a little prop as a symbol of that face. So actually this tattoo that I have, so it's a Philippine tribal tattoo, but I actually got this tattoo because of this episode, right? Like it was so, I'd say, paradigm shifting that I wanted to like mark my body somewhat permanently because of it. So it was the pandemic. I was an international student, or still am, right? I am a migrant to America. A couple things about me, like right, like besides being a Lehigh student, was that I was a first generation student, came from a single mom. Right at that time, my dad had already passed. So by the time I started Lehigh at 18, my dad had already passed 5 years prior. Right. Uh, I was the son of a migrant. He was a laborer in California, in Silicon Valley. So what that meant was there's a term called OFW, Overseas Filipino
Yes.
Worker.
Hmm.
So what that means is he would send remittances, right? Like in the Philippines, an interesting stat is 10% of the GDP is because of money sent by Filipinos abroad, right? 10% of the GDP. Um, and so he was part of that, right, social phenomena. So he would send money back, and I didn't get to like, really like form a full picture of who my dad was. But um I cannot deny I am of his genes and his build and his life. But also because he had passed, right? I had the benefit of flying back and forth from the Philippines and to America to collect Social Security benefits. So before the pandemic, right, before 2020, I had already from the age of 13 to 18 had done 10 international trips by myself. So so it was funny because I was like in a way a seasoned traveler, but more so I was a seasoned young traveler. I didn't necessarily have cash on me, but I was able to like studied the Taiwan airport. I have very vivid memories of like just being in the San Jose library, and I was like staying with like family in like near the Evergreen Library in San Jose, and I would just watch and like observe folks, and that's kind of how I learned about the SATs and getting to America. But I'll just fast forward to this like particular episode. I just bring up these contexts because it informs, right, what
Yes.
happens in the pandemic. So the pandemic happens, right? I'm volunteering. This is circa March 2020. Uh, Me and a group of like 12 other people are volunteering in Virginia in the Shenandoah National Park.
Hmm.
We're clearing the park of like tree like debris, right? And
Were
we're
these
doing
were these volunteers from Lehigh or
from
from?
Lehigh, yes. We were part of what's called like Spring Serve. So the Community Service Office of Lehigh was hosting Spring Serve. It's an alternative spring break,
Mhm.
right? So instead of like going to like Miami and kind of,
Yeah.
sowing your seeds, you go and like volunteer for the week. Um, so I went. It was definitely like at that time, right? Very Catholic. From like the upbringing. Part of the tattoo there that like Philippine son was also because back home when like life as a kid without a dad was somewhat turbulent. I would go to a small chapel almost every day, like very like militantly go and pray to this sun disk
Mm.
like in the chapel was this like blue gemstone with the sun disk and like the host, the communion host was there, and I would pray to it, right, like very, very like militantly, and I practiced. I continued this practice of like meditation and prayer, and like even then, right, like when the whole thing was kind of going up and everything was chaotic, I found prayer to be my solve. But I cannot deny that the reality of my circumstance was glaring in front of me. One, the world is shutting down, right? So like we're in Virginia, we get there's a spring break as a spring serve coordinator. She gets the call like, hey guys, everything's closing down. Leah's closing down. We have to cut this like volunteering trip early, right? Because at that time we had heard about COVID in China, but we thought it was like an isolated case. Now it's March and things are closing down. You have to like, on the call said, hey, you have to bring everybody back. And this is like while we're in the middle of like, right, clearing stuff in the park. So we're like, okay, this is real now, right? So part of us were cleaning stuff in the park. The other part, actually, I remember, and I might like be mixing two service trips too, because like the other part of our group, we were also actually uh working with Habitat for Humanity and like working on a house. I remember actually the house part more because we take a lunch break, right? Like it's as if like we're construction workers getting like a sandwich and we're all tired and it's like sweaty and like grimy and everything, but like we feel good because it's for a good cause. And we just get this news from the service leader. It's like, hey guys, COVID's happening in America. We got to go back. All right, cool. We go back, and I'm seeing everybody pack their stuff up, like their mom, their dads. They just pull up in their, like their sedans,
Mhm.
and everyone's clearing like the campus, right? Everyone's leaving like I remember seeing so many fridges, so many shoes, so many like, branded clothing just spread out on like campus buildings. And I was like, oh my God, like this is like a shopping spree. Like this is like thrifting for free. Not knowing like the glaring fact that no. The bigger picture is that like everybody who has family has left campus and they're doing so for the right reasons because it is a global pandemic and we don't know what's gonna happen next. I didn't have that option, right? My mom, single mom, all the way in the Philippines, she didn't have like power and to like navigate, like fly, or
Yeah.
none of these. So I had spent the pandemic within campus. We did some things, right? Like I tried to keep myself occupied to like the objective of helping students out by like hosting
So,
kind of these food drives. Oh yeah, yeah.
so for you during that time, what was the major challenge that you had?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
So
I can
yes,
I
yes. So
can
like the major.
appreciate, let me just
Mhm.
say this, I can appreciate being alone on Lehigh's campus because when I first came to Lehigh from Guyana, I, s-
Yeah.
I had no family relatives here. I spent my first Christmas alone, the only
Mm.
person on Lehigh's campus. So I know what that is like. And I have vivid memories of that and had certain challenges. Could you tell us what were some of the
Yeah.
challenges being in that situation?
For sure. One was like the financial instability. Like
Mhm.
I was waiting. I remember waiting for my, so I was a Griffin. So I was a residential assistant. And I was doing it because it would pay for room and board for free,
Yes.
right? So that's why you do it.
I was also a
Uh,
Griffin.
yes, yes, yes. And
Yes,
part of it is like, yes,
yes,
you mentor
that's
young
what I'm
people, but
bored.
like the biggest logistical advantage is you don't pay for room and board. So I was doing that. So my question was like, okay, like, but like logistically, how do we do this now? It's a pandemic, so like, where am I gonna stay? So they say, okay, Adrian, you can stay in the dorm for like the next 3 months, but you need to like find somewhere else to stay. So I was like, okay, cool. Then it hit me, right? Because the campus becomes a ghost town. Folks leave. Okay, we do these. There was a part in me that didn't want to accept it, right? Like almost kind of the 5 cycles of grief, right? There's like a part, like there was a grieving process over like what I thought America was, or like what I thought, right, university is versus like what like what I
So
thought
where,
university
so,
was
so
versus what university is.
where did you end up staying if you couldn't stay
Ye-
on the
ye-
campus?
Sure, it was I was in Carruthers in Lower Sense for about 3 months.
Uh-huh.
It was me, this very talented Chinese singer, and it was I there was a third. She was from China. The third girl. I'm trying to remember where the third girl was. I think there was another third. There was a third girl. I think from like somewhere in the Caribbean. I think maybe Haiti.
Mhm.
But there was like a three of us, and then eventually that Haiti girl finally had a cousin that picked her up, and then Chinese. So it became just me and Chinese girl huddled up in our little like in what became like a apartment complex for just two people. And my challenge was like threefold, I'd say. One, it was glaring how alone I was, right? Like the lone, that not just like the feeling of loneliness, but the understanding is like, oh, I'm 20 in America without leverage. Like at that time, I had like some cash saved, right? However, it was like not to the point where I have like financial stability. So now there's this deep anxiety. What happens next? Second challenge was now I'm like seeing right like the reality for what it is like hey sure internet like as an international student you're given this privilege because I think it's one of the easiest ways to acclimate to integrate with America is because you get to hang out with young people, young Americans, um from also like very diverse groups of life, but like right, like they're much more open-minded to kind of like having welcoming you, showing you kind of like, like their customs, their ways of celebrating holidays. Versus say if I was just a migrant, right, like without Lehigh, that experience would be much more closed, right? So I had that advantage, but you strip that off because of a pandemic and you realize the reality. It's like, oh wow, my community's gone. So there was a death. Like Lehigh, just like the vibrancy of it, the life of it was dead. And so, right, I was dealing with that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So how did this end for you?
Yeah, yeah. So, interestingly enough, I worked as a security guard for a church.
Hmm.
So there's this Korean church, the University Bible Fellowship Church around Bethlehem. It was like by like NYC Village Pizza. So at this time, right, in my head, there's two things. One, if I need to go back to the Philippines, I want to be as cash positive as possible.
Hmm.
So that was like my like thinking. That was like how I optimized was increase savings. So I think I might have to go back. And I don't want to go back broke, right? I want to go back with some capital to like make moves in the Philippines that I wouldn't have if I didn't go to America. And that was like weighing on my mind. Like I didn't want the years spent in America to be a waste. So what that meant was like I was very creative with like finding lodging. So I became a security guard. I basically said to this one pastor that I would go to like for Bible study on Thursdays, like, hey, what if, right? Like I know you guys are older and you guys want to be safe. No one's gonna be going to the church for like the time being. Every Bible study is gonna be virtual. What if I stay in like what it was the closet room,
Yeah.
right? Where they just put like old Bibles and like a desk and a printer. I told them I gave them an offer like, hey, what if I make sure nobody does anything funny within the church, and you let me stay in that closet room, right? Because there was a kitchen. There was a kitchen in like the fellowship hall of the church.
Mhm.
You let me stay there for the whole summer. Like until like this dies down, like this pandemic dies down, let me stay in the church. And he was like, okay, but how can you like make it work? I said, don't worry. I'll call some friends up. We'll put a futon bed that I got from the girlfriend of one of my good friends. I put in like a fridge I found from one of the dorms. And then I turned like there was this filing cabinet I turned into like a cabinet for shirts and like, garments and all that. And I was young. I had the advantage of being 20 with a high risk for like poverty, if I'm being honest. I had a high appetite for like that kind of bohemian life. And and I think that like that had helped, but it didn't save me from the third. I think the third challenge of all this like of the pandemic in at Lehigh, right? Was so one, right? Like logistically, you have to the stress, the chronic stress did weigh on my nervous system. That was undeniable. The second was the chronic stress of isolation. But then I think the third, and I think arguably weightier, was a spiritual crisis, right? So I had gone through kind of like this, dark night of the soul. And it definitely challenged. It had challenged to the point where it bended and broke and bended
So tell me,
my fervent Catholicism at that time, which at that time was the only saving, like it was my solve. It was my when people ask like, hey, who's Adrian? Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's the one who's like very Catholic. He's the one who goes to like Sunday church a lot. Like my core identity, right, at that time, my worldview. My worldview was formed by being Catholic. That had been upended by this pandemic.
so your core faith
Hmm.
as a Catholic was challenged and upended
Hmm.
by the pandemic.
Hmm.
What helped you to recover from that?
Yes, I think one was an unlikely source. One was comedy, like stand-up comedy.
Mhm.
There was something undeniably attractive about these outsiders speaking truth. I remember like George Carlin had like bits that I was just like would put on replay. Like, there was just like it was something undeniably attractive to their truth telling that I was like, oh my God, I cannot lie to myself how like shitty the situation is. I this is so difficult. And it's like I'm looking for validation from like folks around me, how like weighty and heavy this is. And it just seemed that like at that time, right? I didn't have that like core family or like I had friends, but I had realized it wasn't like deep enough where like that validation could come from. So comedy was a solve for a good bit, right? It was like a temporary medication. The other one I'd say, the other one I'd say was quiet walks around campus, quiet walks around the DNL trail, where I had the sobering reality come into me, which was I am a right. I am a migrant. I am um I am a Filipino in America during a global pandemic. I am a international student on an F1 visa that doesn't have the security of permanent residency. I am in that time what a word that like really kept ringing in my head was I am a non-residential alien, right? So that word, that phrase was very 2020 for me, non-residential alien.
But
And that
now,
idea,
now,
yeah,
now you're working at Ernst Young,
yes.
which is a
Mhm.
position as American as it can be.
Yeah,
Being at
ironically
Ernst
enough.
Young. How did this really challenging time during the pandemic,
Mhm.
how would you say dealing with that prepared you for the challenge of being at an Ernst Young?
Sure. I took a year where I tried to answer this question. 1 year question was for me, what would life be without without my understanding of the Judeo-Abrahamic God,
Mhm.
right? Like I was very stringent on who I thought God was. What
Mhm.
if I was wrong? So I took a year, experimented with the almost like Rumspringer, right? For the Mormons. I took a Rumspringer a year. And in that year, I said I wanted to get like a tattoo because in that year I had finally let myself feel the challenges of being a single a son, only child of a single mom. I
Mhm.
let myself understand the gravity, the statistical improbability of staying in America post international studies. I started like understanding like soberly, not in like I think before I dramatized it or I think before I may have like fantasized over it, but I think at 2021, 2022, I started soberly thinking about, hey, I don't have a trust fund. Hey, my mom is about to retire in 2 years. She's at that time 60, right? 61. Hey, if I go back to the Philippines after like what was like a heavy investment of sacrifice and time, and my mom paid for like the first year tuition before I got right like the room and board scholarship. Like these are all like investments, and what's the ROI, right? Like so this it was very sobering because I was like, oh my God, I can't I I have to think about this as an adult. And I can't rely on my mom nor right like nor an quote unquote adult to make this decision. So I said, okay, let me let me take a risk. So I took a very, very like a big risk. I said, the presidential scholarship is going to be my route. I was the last cohort. I was part of the year that was like the last one eligible for the presidential scholarship. And the idea there was you get a 3.85 GPA and you can get a full fifth year free. You can get the summer, oh sorry, you can get the summer, you can get the summer semester, the fall semester, and the spring semester all covered for, regardless of the number of credits, right? As long as like, you can pass,
So this is a
we'll pay for the credit.
presidential scholarship at Lehigh.
Presidential scholarship, yes.
Mhm.
So I'm thinking, so now I'm like, I'm this is like 2021, and I'm looking at that specific route because I think to myself, I'm like, I've taken calculus classes, I've taken science classes. It's I'm too stretched. Like my nervous system is still recalibrating from the fact that like the pandemic had just happened. I like
So,
weirdly enough,
so
like yeah.
did anyone at Lehigh help
Mhm.
you during this time, and as you're looking at applying for the presidential scholarship, did you have anyone who?
Yeah, I had very unorthodox like advocates, but advocates nevertheless. One, uh Todd Watkins.
Mhm.
Todd Watkins, a professor of economics. I sat down with Todd and I said, Todd, do you think I have what it takes to do well in corporate America? Like, do you think I can take harder economics classes? Do you think I can do this new master's business analytics? He looks at me straight in the eye because I was doing Martindale at that time when we had traveled to Alaska together. He looks me straight in the eye and he says, yes, you're gonna work hard. You can't flatter, I'm not gonna flatter you. You can't just improvise this.
Mhm.
You're gonna work, but
Mhm.
you can. That was very big. That boosted my confidence. The second one, an unlikely advocate, Nick Christie. He was the Lamberton Hall supervisor. He was my boss for
Mhm.
like 3 years. I was working in an event center and like it paid like if you were working at like on campus at that time, you knew Lamberton was like one of like the best on campus jobs because like you could work nights
Mhm.
and you could get free food and you get like your weekend events because like you're there where like stuff is happening. He taught me how to drive.
Mhm.
Like he was very kind during the pandemic. He made sure he checked in on me. He made sure that when Lamberton was finally opening up, I had shifts, right? And like just knowing that like a boss trusted me
Mhm.
boosted like it. There was something edifying about that. There's a third one, Cassie Johnson, theater department. She was my thesis advisor. So speaking of the presidential scholarship, my route to getting there was very unorthodox. Because I told my professors, I said, hey, I'm working very hard on this calculus. And it's not I can get it, but it's taking me twice the amount of time as the regular student because I did not take trigonometry in high school. The Philippine education system was very different from what, the K to 12 like not even, right? Like some folks were coming in with like AP credit and it was so alien to me, right? And like even the concept of a IB program where it
Mhm.
seemed like almost every other student went to international baccalaureate type programs. I'm like, dude, we were like talking about like Noah's Ark, like in 10th grade. Y'all were talking about like the biology of like, like the actual like book of like Charles Darwin and actually breaking down like, and like the Galapagos Islands, like his findings. I'm like, oh shoot, okay, there's catch up time. So basically I talked to the professor and I said, hey, I'm gonna catch up. It's gonna take some time. Let me use my strengths. Like I can improvise. I'm very perceptive. Or so I thought. I think so. But I like live performance. So I told my professor, this is gonna sound far left field, but I think I can do this. What if I do theater? What if I do theater? I'll make sure, like whatever show you put me on, I'll make sure it's a great show.
Mhm.
That's my promise to you. I'll get the great grade from theater. Then I'll convert that, right, with the presidential scholarship to do business
Yeah.
analytics. And so it's very unorthodox because it's like, wait, you're telling me you're gonna go fully liberal arts, then make the jump to econometric classes and like predictive analytics classes and learning, Python and code and SQL. And I said, yes, I know it's unorthodox, but I need time.
Mhm.
And time I did get, and thankfully. Um,
And do you
yeah,
think that was sort of somewhat characteristic of the Lehigh environment to be open to a different way of doing things?
I I think so. I think there's like a term, right? Of like Lehigh's uh there's a term. It's like intercollegiate
Hmm.
um interdisciplinary. That's the word. Interdisciplinary.
Disciplinary, yeah. Mhm.
Yes, yes. I think because President Hubley, President Simon stressed on it, right? Like because your College of Arts and Sciences doesn't disqualify you from taking a College of Business class,
Mhm.
right? We're not in silos. Like if you
Mhm.
do well here, you can. There's there's skills that's transferable from a theater degree to business analytics. As far-fetched as it sounds, like I think the rigor of like, being in like woodworking class with Trevor or like with Kashi, like being very honest and like very frank with her in like during rehearsals and like just the idea of rehearsing a scene, rehearsing a set. I think I eventually took those muscles and thought about, okay, cool. If I'm going to create, right, like a machine learning algorithm, I have to like the rehearsing muscle there is like I have to keep running code and okay, it's gonna break, but it's like keep running the code, keep debugging until it works.
So
Like
what advice,
the
what
yeah,
advice would you give to, as we close out, what advice
sure,
would you give to
sure.
present students if you were to give them one piece of advice for any challenges they have, during their time at Lehigh? What
Yeah.
would that advice be?
This is difficult because then right uh I don't see I think a question is so much more powerful than like like quote unquote right advice. I think I would suggest, and I guess I'm giving that I am kind of prompting them to do something. Ask yourself, what if I'm wrong?
Hmm.
What if I'm wrong? What if my worldview is wrong? Right? What if my worldview is wrong? What if
And
maybe do an exercise of that what ifs, the what ifs. What if what if the way like have a concept about money and the way quote unquote success works is incorrect, right? What if my worldview, i.e., formed by my the religion of my parents, the religion of my in like a neighborhood, the religion of my kin at in childhood. What if it I don't have to follow
And
that script in adulthood?
what would you advise them to do with the answer that they get? You
I
know.
would advise them to keep it through the process because I think they're gonna find themselves wrong again. And I think it's so fascinating. Like it the this is gonna sound cheesy, but like right, like the it harkens to that line, an unexamined life
Hmm.
is not worth living. Like
Hmm.
this process of examination is by itself like rewarding because you get to like it's a filter of the essential and the non-essential.
So
Um,
the core thought is to be sure to examine your life, examine what you're doing. And you do that by asking the what if question.
yes, and like the examination paired with the humility of unknowing.
Hmm.
I think that's one thing I would actually, one advice I would tell folks is this is maybe beyond the what if question is if you're a young person listening to this and there are unknowns. I mean, AI is an unknown, job stability is an unknown, like financial stability is an unknown. I would offer a word of kindness to yourself and recognizing that yes, it is unknown. I am feeling the stress and anxiety of it, and that it is perfectly valid, and that there is no there is no solution, quick solution that would come from an external source, that I would have to look at this problem soberly and I would have to come up with solutions that are bespoke to my circumstance because no, no external power will come and completely solve it for you. And that process is so difficult and it is arduous, but it is like beautiful in a way because it gives you autonomy to fashion a life that's yours. And I would say be kind to yourself in that process. If you can, in moments, enjoy it. If you can, I know it's a difficult process being a young person right now, but I'd say laugh with your friends, given how chaotic and uncertain it is. Like play music loudly, right? Like be high, like like be silly. Like the world is like silly enough as it is. Like you have permission to be silly. And but these are this is what I've found true in my like examination of self. I'm curious to hear their thoughts, like if they do the what if examinations, what they find to be true. I would be curious to hear their answers. But but yeah, be kind to yourself. Like there's this idea from like, Zen Buddhism, be an observer of the observer, that you are a vessel, a container of thoughts. And especially during these times when there's a lot of unknown, a lot of unkind thoughts enter our heads, I would just recommend to them like when an unkind thought or unkind events, circumstances, people cross your path, know that it too shall pass. That kindness and loving kindness will come to you soon, right? Like these are clouds, but the sky that is loving kindness is ever present.
Adrian,
Yeah.
thank you very much. And
Yeah.
I'm sure the present undergraduates will find wisdom in what you suggest. Thank you.
Hopefully. Yeah. Thank you.